people keep asking me, why are you doing this? So I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to start with that and go through some housekeeping items. So 3 years ago this month, I was diagnosed with stage 2 mean pancreatic cancer, and I started treatment here at Stanford with my most excellent, awesome, very good doctors. And I went through all of standard of care. Did 6 months of chemo, did surgery, and at the end of all that, my prognosis was not great. Uh, and I said to my doctor, "What do we do now?" And my most excellent doctor said, "Well, that's kind of it. That's all standard of care has to offer you. So to just go on all the weight, and you might want to get your approach from us." Well, at that point, I went out into my network and I talked to the VCs that I know, and I talked to the startup companies I know, and I met Rad at Cancer Patient Lab and said, what else is out there beyond standard of care? Because I'm done with that. I mean, I have to find something beyond that to help. And I was really amazed at how much tech, how much cancer tech is out there being developed, not by big pharma, not by the federal government, not even, but universities are helping a little bit, but mostly by startup companies. And there's just so much in the pipeline that will be going online, say. And we need more exposure to these companies. And we definitely need to put them in front of the investment community, especially the venture capital community. There's one where we are right now in society. Federal government is not funding fundamental research like it used to. A friend of mine named Thomas Sudo was Menlo Park. He's a doctor and professor here at Stanford, and he talks a lot about 40s of fundamental research. We wouldn't have the internet without fundamental research, and it's not being funded as much as the federal government. The large companies really don't have. They have shareholders to report to. They're not in a good position to sway for the fences on game-changing technologies. So we're back in startup land. And that's where the really big innovations are coming from. And that's what we're going to explore today. And I think by the end of the day, I'm hoping that you're going to be as blown away as I was, is just what the possibilities are. Now, I will tell you that as of my last checkup about a month ago, my most amazing, awesome, excellent doctor says I have liked the cure. Yeah, thank you. That's not something I thought I'd hear or something I think he thought he'd say. And the question people asking me, oh, well, why is that? What did that? And the answer is, I don't know. But it was probably something that we're wanting to talk about here today. So we'll go through, we've got people here to talk about vaccines, neoadjuvant, mRNA, ADCs, antidrug conjugates, monoclonal antibodies. We've got all sorts of therapies that are going to be talked about. And you're going to find AI is going to figure prominently as a thing to almost everything we talk about here, because that is definitely going to change play here. So let me tell you a little bit about the agenda today. So we have a keynote this morning. We had some introductory comments, Congress and Ricardo. Then we had our keynote. We go right into our panels. You have the schedule, so you take a look at panels, decide which one maybe appeals to you most directly. We will have a lunch speaker, Dr. Gabiola, who's going to do us a very short talk, maybe 10 minutes on lunch. And then we have an hour. And then at 12:30, we go right into the pitches. We get 17 companies pitching. And my pitch events are unlike other pitch events. I like to have more investors in the room than startups. So you'll have 17 companies pitching to a couple dozen investors and 10 minutes each. Finally, I want to mention that Grail has graciously offered to provide their Galleria blood test, which is how I found my cancer, by the way, which was the Gallery blood test. In fact, if it worked for the Gallery blood test, I would very likely not be here today. So I'm a big believer in Gallery, and Grail is offering that here on site at a discounted rate. So I'd hope you take advantage of that. They've been very gracious. And then a couple other housekeeping items, just so you know. We are providing lunch at 12:30. Parking is available out there. You have to download the Park Mobile app and go in and secure your parking. And with that, I do want to, I'm going to type this up. Just some comments of Congressman Licard.
Hi, I'm Sam Liccardo, and I have the honor of representing Stanford University and the rest of our beautiful district in Congress. Thank you for welcoming me onto your screen today. I wish I could be with you all in person, but I'm out here voting and working out here in DC. I'd like to start off by thanking Roger Royce and the organizing team for convening all of us. As many of you know, Roger is an inspiring patient advocate who has turned his journey battling pancreatic cancer into a mission to improve cancer care through both technological innovation and policy reform. And thank you, the innovators, the advocates, researchers, and clinicians who are making strides toward putting cancer in our rearview mirror. As you know, cancer remains one of the greatest public health challenges of our time. Nearly 4 out of 10 of us will be diagnosed at some point in our lives. Cancer is a tremendously painful burden that touches every family and every community, and it demands an all-hands-on-deck response. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you to Silicon Valley, which has brought us to an inflection point in the fight against cancer. From rapid genomic sequencing to personalized stem cell therapies, progress is accelerating like never before. AI and machine learning are transforming drug discovery, refining diagnostics and enhancing care precision. Tools like liquid biopsies and multi-cancer early detection enable the detection of multiple cancers earlier and at scale, allowing timely life-saving treatment. Meanwhile, theranostics, which fuse diagnostic imaging with targeted treatment, helping clinicians locate and attack tumors with remarkable accuracy. These breakthroughs are transforming cancer care, turning a devastating diagnosis into a fight that more and more of us can win. Progress in cancer care doesn't just happen in labs or startups. It all depends on so many of us. It depends on smart, forward-thinking public policy as well. That fuels innovation and expands access. That's why a focus of my work in Congress has been accelerating innovation, improving access, and advancing outcomes for people facing cancer. Recently, I joined the Congressional Cancer Caucus to deepen that commitment and push for bolder investments in cancer research and care delivery. I've also pushed back against harmful cuts in research funding and those shots toward universities and all the efforts to undermine the efforts of our federal agencies, including vital cancer work at NIH. Every dollar we invest fuels the breakthroughs that these patients rely on. There's more work to be done in the lab, in hospitals, and on the Hill, and we're going to do it together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker this morning. Is Vivek Wadhwa. He's a technology entrepreneur and an academic. He's a distinguished fellow and adjunct professor at Carnegie Mellon School of Engineering in Silicon Valley and a distinguished fellow in the Labor and Work-Life program at Harvard Law School. But most recently, and I met Vivek probably 10 years ago on a panel right here at Stanford on artificial intelligence, oddly enough. And most recently, Vivek now is an entrepreneur with a new company that he is unveiling to the public for the first time in our forum. So Vivek, thanks for being here.
Hi, Ted. I'm going to give you a tour of the future, exactly why I believe that we'll be able to not only cure cancer, but every disease in the next decade or so. I'm going to start by taking you to the past.
Hey, Odie, Dave here.
Strong is on the boat. There is a 38-year-old American standing on the surface of the boat. On this July 20th, 1969.
At what ball pit for man? I beat me.
So most of you are young here, but you always, like me, grew up thinking this was a feat of technology. Do you know what this technology was that took us to the moon? It was the Apollo guidance computer. And do you know how advanced the Apollo guidance computer was? It had the same computing power as today's musical greeting card. That's what my generation has been marveling at for a generation. Right? A stupid musical greeting card. Here is what we're babbling at right now. Still, these images coming back from Mars. And that the camera on the rover Curiosity is a 2 megapixel camera. We threw those in the garbage about 10 years ago. So that is the state of technology. The computing power we have today is about 1 billion times more powerful than existed on the planet when this technology was created. Because this is how technology is advancing. It took thousands of years to go from agriculture to pottery to the plow to the beaker roan and so on. Over the last 100 years, we've had advance after advance after advance. Technology is advancing exponentially. We sort of take it for granted. We're like the frogs in the hot water, in the water, keep getting warmer. We don't understand what's going on. There's a lot of pessimism about the future and technology. It is advancing exponentially, and it's not only computing, which we know about here in Silicon Valley. It is everything that computing touches, everything that becomes this mission starts advancing exponentially. Whether but AI, robotics, 3D printing, virtual reality networks, digital medicine, nanotech, you name it, it's all exponential now. Everything is at a phase that we can't imagine. Exponential technologies are converging and making the impossible possible. In this talk, I'm going to talk about why I decided, I had retired actually from teaching and came out of retirement 2.5 years ago because I decided I need to save the world using exponential technology. I'm going to talk about that. But let's now get into medicine. That's what this whole conference is about. Let's talk about the advances that are happening there. First of all, whether you realize it or not, but Apple has become a medical diagnostics company. The tech industry has realized that the big money isn't in selling smartphones or selling subscriptions anymore. It's in medicine. We're talking about a $3 trillion industry that Silicon Valley now wants to own, it wants to eat. So a major transformation happened about 5 years ago, that Silicon Valley decided to now enter a completely new field and take over medicine. Next step, we won't need the Apple Watches and the iPhones that they're creating. We're going to have epidermal electronics. We're going to always be on. Essentially, we're going to have sensors in our body, in our clothing, in our shoes, all around us, monitoring everything we do 24/7, so that everything is moving to the cloud, and we're getting massive amounts of data. And then what happens? We start going inside the body. The Philips pill can is about 15 years old now. Newer versions of technologies. Soon we're going to have sensors within our body also that monitor us 24/7 and upload the data to the cloud. So we get it data at an unprecedented rate that I could never ever imagine before. Everything about us. Our smartphones are the greatest spying devices ever made. They're capturing everything about our lifestyle, our habits, when we wake, when we sleep, how we walk, who we talk to, who we meet, who we shake hands with. Everything is being recorded all the time. And what do you do with data? Well, we're in Silicon Valley, I don't know to tell you. You use AI to analyze it. So what happens now? In the next 5 years or so, next 5 years or that, AI will exceed the capabilities of doctors in practically every field. Why? Because AI has access to data that human beings simply cannot comprehend. AI can look at the big picture and analyze it. Kuldeep isn't talking today, but he was telling me about what he's doing. He's simply taking data, putting it together in a more sensible way, and he's able to predict the likelihood of serious disease better than human beings can. He's one of 1,000 startups who are doing amazing things in analyzing the data. In fact, there may be 100,000 startups globally that are doing it. That's when the magic begins to happen. And that's nothing. And then there's the human genome, the bits and the bytes that make human beings up. The bits and bytes in software. We're not talking about the bits and bytes that make human beings up, the human genome. There was a race in the year 2000 between the US government and a scientist, Craig Vector, to sequence the genome. The government spent $2.76 billion. This is several governments combined. The scientists came up with $100 million, and he beat the government to the punch. He cheated, he took government data, but he put $100 million to sequence the genome. What cost about $3 billion in the year 2000, today cost about $300. Or you can get simpler panels for $100. That's exponential advance. Move forward 5 years. And sequencing a genome would be cheaper than a cup of coffee, which means we're getting another type of data at an amazing pace. What does that mean? We can cure every disease. Now, let me challenge me on that. What is disease? Well, first of all, you detect disease using symptoms. How many symptoms are there? Well, think about it. You can have a headache, you can have a stomach ache, you can have a foot ache, you can have this ache, you can have that ache, you can have a backache. After about 300 or 400 symptoms, you run out of them. Symptoms are limited. How many diseases are there? By one estimate, since the beginning of humankind, we've had about 6,000, 7,000 diseases. That's it. Now put your mathematician hat on if you have one. It's a simple problem. What you need is data to be able to analyze it and to figure out what the correlations are between symptoms, disease, lifestyle habits. It's a job for AI. This is why there's so much happening in the startup field. Everyone is now talking about curing this disease or that disease, or looking into this or that, getting data and trying to find the correlations between disease. And we're just getting started. The stuff that's happening today is baby stuff. 99% of these startups are going to fail, but 1% will succeed. And then there'll be death to set. And then you're going to have all sorts of breakthroughs happening in the next 5 or 10 years. And then what happens? Well, I talked about DNA sequencing being dirt cheap. It's going to be as common as blood as sun. And then we're going to be downloading and printing custom designed medicines, tissues, and bacteria. 3D printing is advancing exponentially also, including 3D printing of organic material, 3D printed lungs, 3D printed hearts. You name it, we're going to be 3D printing proteins, polygons that you can print at home, which dispense common medicines. That might be in the 5 to 10 year range, but it's happening. And then all of us, just like we now are masters at using AI, what happened in the last 2 years? Everyone is using ChatGPT or Claude or God knows what else. We've all become experts at AI exponentially. Before that, we became experts at smartphones, at websites, right? So we're going to all become biohealth hackers and journalists, trying to understand how genes work and fix them using our own AIs. And then what happens? We also have artificial organs. We're going to have, smart prosthesis. Already, a number of companies are developing 3D printing prosthetics. Well, remember Steve Austin's $6 million man? I think Steve Austin becomes a reality in the year 2035. And Steve Austin is at the $6 million man. He's a $6,000 man because the cost of everything is dropping exponentially as well. And then we're talking about genetic engineering, literally using CRISPR to alter life itself. I'm just terrified of this because we're going to be misusing it just like we misuse technology. And then Elon Musk company, brain-computer interfaces. Google is doing a lot of work in this. They don't talk about it. They're doing a lot of work in this. Elon is doing a lot of work in this. There are probably 100 other companies that have made major breakthroughs in connecting the mind to computers and uploading to the cloud. You'll start seeing realistic solutions in the next 3 to 5 years. So this is how fast technology is moving. And then the worry. When we talk about $6 million man, we talk about genetic engineering, all of this thing. When does a human become a machine? We're worried about when machines become smarter than us and they kill us. Forget that. What happens when we become machines? You talk to people like Greg Kurzweil and a whole bunch of others in Silicon Valley. These people have gone crazy. They're talking about transhumanism and the man-machine mergers. It's happening right now as we speak. And we're at ground zero for a lot of these crazy innovations and ideas. It's all happening around us, except we're not aware. All right, so let's get to the topic of the conference. What Bhajan, by the way, talked about cancer. Why do I believe we're going to cure cancer? Well, here's where we are right now in cancer research. Us human beings are looking at different aspects of it. Stanford, Mayo, you name it, every university, they have professors who specialize in particular parts of the disease. All they care about is their tenure All they care about is publishing stupid papers that no one reads, right? And all they care about is their field. No one's looking at the big picture. That is a problem with the entire research system. And then where do they get their money from? From pharma companies. All they care about is some drug that's novel, not existing. With cancer, there probably are 100 different drugs, 1,000 different cocktails that could cure cancers. But there's no money for pharma, therefore pharma doesn't fund that stuff. And we're stuck with this view of the world, where everyone is looking at a different aspect of it. But today, even today's AI, as you know, I'm talking about 2025, even 2024, 2023, we weren't quite there yet. The AI that we're going to see emerge this year can actually do magic. It can start looking at the big picture rather than looking at the parts of the elephant, which is what our academics do. It can look at the whole picture, everything, including lifestyle habits, correlations, diseases, symptoms, you name it, it can do it. What do we need for AI? All of you know that. Data. Data, 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 data. What's the problem with the US medical system? It's as corrupt as could be. Between the regulations and between the vested interests and between the funding, we're hoarding data. We are data rich, and however, you can't get in the United States without getting sued. It is not available. No one shares data. Now, I've been teaching advancing technologies for quite a while, and I lost my wife to cancer 5 years ago. Devinda was everything to me. She was my soulmate, literally. I was devastated. I mean, literally, for months on end, I didn't leave the house. I had a beautiful house, Dublin and Menlo Park. I couldn't leave the house. And then when I ended up having a heart attack, then my children said, Dad, we have to move out of the house. It was my wife, essentially. And I mean, this was my second heart attack. So it was an immediate death experience also. But then I realized that, okay, you know, while all this was happening, her words kept haunting me. Because she was my boss. She says, Vivek, spend the rest of your life helping others. Make sure no one suffers the way I did. So she gave me my marching orders, and I said, all right, now I'm going to do something about cancer. I'm going to cure cancer. It's stupid, it's crazy. But the life resolution I gave you, I put this together many years ago after losing her. And I said, okay, we've got to get the data to cure cancer. How are we going to get it? Forget the United States. It's a corrupt, system which you can't penetrate. I mean, we're stuck in the past, and we're not able to reform the US system. Then I thought, okay, China. China is corrupt and it's evil. India, it's corrupt, but it's not evil. They actually have moral and ethical values there. And India doesn't have a pharma industry to protect the way the United States are. It doesn't have a medical system to protect. It doesn't have academics who are stuck in their arrogant holds, who won't listen to anyone except their own colleagues. So I put together a grand plan to cure cancer. And the grand plan essentially walks through all the different components of it and said, we need to get data. And I took it to Prime Minister Modi. How do I get a meeting with Prime Minister Modi? Long story. But I spent an hour with him, and he got it. And I was amazed. I was skeptical of T. Center, right-way T. Center. I wonder if he can speak English. I had an amazing meeting. I mean, my Hindi is not very good. So I spoke in English, he spoke in Hindi. I do understand him, and he would completely understand me. And by the time we were done, he told his principal scientific advisor, he says, get Professor Badwa, whatever he needs, make it happen. So the Indian government, stepped in because the Prime Minister told him to do that. And then COVID happened, but that's another story. But regardless of it, I was able to hook up with some amazing entrepreneurs who had similar motives. Venkat Ramachandran in particular, he headed up Tata Trust. If Indian people here know Tata, they better know who Venkat is. Venkat decided that he is now going to put together a solution to India's cancer problem. Because if you think the system here is bad, in India it's just broken. There's no system. So they put together. So he and his colleagues were putting together a distributed cancer care network for India, and I started to team up with them. And I got my advisors, the who's who of Benson here from Harvard, Mayo, Stanford, etc. When we started now guiding the project. And the goal of the project was to transform India's cancer care system, set up a distributed cancer care network. Because if you think about it, to take the example of cancer surgeries, we have all of these experts specializing in fields that you try getting an appointment with other experts. It takes you months, and then they're ridiculous fees, and they have limited knowledge of anything else except their fields and so on. If you're removing a tumor, any surgeon can do it. The doctors here will tell you, no, you need to be a specialist. That is false. The surgeon simply needs guidance on how to do it. When it comes to providing, doing chemotherapies and providing basic cancer care, it can be done anywhere. You just have to provide guidance to nurses, have protocols, be done anywhere. So the concept was to have a distributed cancer care network by which the entire country is covered. That you would provide basic training and support in every village all across the country. And then you would have regional centers so that the people didn't have to travel more than an hour from their house to get chemotherapy. You get basic treatment. And then if you needed to get more advanced treatments, you would go to one of the major centers that were being set up all across the country. That's what the plan was. And as of last year, they had screened about 2 million patients, identified about 100,000 who had cancers, and put them through a pipeline, and they're now treating them. So this is happening. The gathering data, the IT infrastructure is so incredible that when I took it to the U.S. government, I kind of at the heads of the cancer moonshot. What's her name? Daniel, I don't even remember her name. Such a horrible sort of meetings I had with them. She said, oh my God, we were just talking about having this, 10-year plan. I said, Daniel Carnival, I said, you got it right now. Cardinals will give it to you for free right now. Oh, no, we can't do that. I said, why not? Because we have all of these regulations that don't is bullshit. I said, go to India and talk to talk to Modi, and you can get all you can implement this Auto Press India. And it was a useless. It was a useless meeting I had with her, and then follow-ups and so on. So what I realized was that the corruption goes all the way up to the White House, and nothing's going to happen. All these people care about is a bureaucracy giving out grants to their friends, all the billions of dollars in the U.S. cancer moonshot, which are to friends and family of the government officials. That's what the entire U.S. cancer system is about. I'm really bitter and I'm really angry about it because I wasted so much time and energy trying to get through to these people. It didn't happen. So I said, fuck it. I'm going to now work in India. And I did this. We had a project over there. And what we started learning was that the problems in India are far deeper than the United States. That people, almost every case we were finding was stage 4. And Keith Flaherty, who was director of clinical research at Harvard Medical, he was on the advisory board with me. He asked me, so why is everything stage 4? Well, because they can't afford the test over that. The Gallery test we're talking about, $1,000. That's, more than people make in a year over there. How can the people in the developing world afford these tests? They can't. So, and then even the basic protocol not present. So then, this is about 3 years ago, I went back into a slump. I said, okay, now to figure out what to do about here. So I started researching how detection is done. How does Gallery work? What did Theranos do? So I spoke to Steve Jevitson and about some of the local investors in Theranos, trying to figure out what she did right, what she did wrong. And what I realized was that everything that they're doing in medical diagnostics is based on 50, 70, 80, 140-year-old technologies. It's more of the same. So what was Theranos? Theranos was simply miniaturizing the immunoassays that you essentially take a sample of blood, you put it into little buckets, put a reagent on it or an antigen on it, look at the reaction, and you note the color and yes or no. And that's, I'm simplifying dramatically, but that's what the technology is. And then you have these, other diagnostic equipment that do the same, more or less, using one ancient technique or another. But essentially, they're looking for one thing at a time. And then you had the Theranos. All they were doing was miniaturizing the pulse. And the trouble was that business was miniaturized to the point that the blood cells were greater than her capillaries. They were clogging up, and then she started committing fraud. That's what our system is. The gold standard for detecting compounds, elements, etc., is mass spectrometry. Mass spectrometry is massive, cumbersome, extremely expensive, and very limited. So I went back to the basics. Okay, so what are we trying to do? DNA was the big breakthrough that happened about 30, 40 years ago. And everything we're doing is based on DNA. What DNA did was it transformed biology to data. It revealed a new universe of genetic knowledge So I said, what if we could do the same thing with organic matter, except we don't try to decode DNA, but we try to decode the organic matter itself. Because I'd looked into mass spectrometry, and what mass spectrometry was essentially doing was, taking a sample, minimizing it, and causing it to ionize. You essentially use laser, plasma, or argon gases. Argon is the most common one. You essentially take a material, an analyte, you hit it with a power source, you get it to ionize, turn it into atoms, and then you measure the mass to charge ratios. You see how fast that atom string travels. So some atoms are heavier than others, and you essentially see what it shows up at the image this big tunnel, and you measure those, and then you put together the organic structure of that based on that. Then you have all of these libraries you analyze to see it's in the peaks and valleys, and you analyze those using these libraries. That's what mass spectrometry is. He said, then started looking into the depths of that. He said, well, what if you could now take when you ionize, you create a light spectrum. What if you could capture the light spectrum and analyze it using AI? Well, OES, there's a type of mass spectrometry that does something similar, but primitive. It's done manually. So I came up with the concept of now of ionizing and capturing light spectrum and developing this, tomorrow's diagnostic lab. My goal was to get it to be $10,000 right now, $50,000. Essentially doing mass spectrometry without ionizing it, without all the sample prep, without all the complexity, no consumables, none of that stuff, but creating a device like this. And the trick here is if we take a analyte, we take a sample as is, put it through a vacuum chamber, turn it into plasma, and put sensors on it to capture the light spectrum, and then we train the AI in what that light means. That's what my thesis was. There was a technology from Chile that I had licensed. Roger was popular. This company was guiding that company. Long stories, but the DoD, the Department of Defense, had funded a project in Chile about 5-7 years ago to do precisely what I'm talking about, because they worried about China poisoning U.S. water supplies, and they wanted to be able to detect in a real-time manner what was happening in water and organic compounds. So I took the technology, it didn't work. The DoD and the Chileans failed, they didn't have the expertise. And I took it to India again. And I had some of the most brilliant scientists in the world work on it for the last roughly 2 years or so. IIT Madras, if you know anything about India, the IITs are MIT and Stanford combined at a scale that you can't even imagine over here. So IIT Madras took over my R&D, and along with the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, AIMS, which is the Harvard Medical of India, they spent about 1.5 years solid redoing all the technology, rethinking it, and they succeeded. They built a device that is just unbelievable. So my goal right now is to be able to analyze breath, urine, blood, saliva, the human fluids part of it, and to tell you everything that's in it. So the standard here is inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometry. This is the gold standard. These instruments cost between $200,000 and $1.5 million. They cost $50,000 a year in consumables, $100,000 a year in consumables, maintenance, you name it, extremely expensive. And you can only do 10 to 20 samples a day. That's typically what happens with mass spectrometry. And you need PhDs, you need experienced people analyzing everything. Watch this.
You put the sample in there.
In less than a minute doing this math spectrum, which is equal to what the existing spectrometers do. So this was a 1-year-old video that we made. Since then, we were trying to analyze the spectrum. We found there's too much interference, too much noise, and so on. So then we looked at the whole story again. So we were doing things the conventional way, the way mass spectrometry does it. Then we looked at the data and we realized that every element has 6 into 100 peaks. It's a 3-dimensional maze. We said, let's train our AI on that. we changed the techniques, and voila! I mean, it's almost like magic as to what we're doing. This is the results I got last week from our teams. With it again, these are volatile organic compounds, VOCs, which basically show up in your breath. They are, scientists know that that's one way of 80% of infectious diseases can be detected by VOCs. And then metals, everything from mercury, calcium, fluoride, titanium, selenium, antimony. We are now be able to detect them at higher accuracy levels than mass spectrometers. How long does it take? I showed you 1 minute. No no sample prep. Voila, we can tell you exactly what's in it. So this is where we're at right now. I mean, the results are absolutely, because I didn't expect to be able to get to mass spectrometry levels. But we were doing is I was positioning this between mass spectrometry and RT-PCR and DEO, water technologies. Now we're leaping ahead of mass spectrometer with this technology. It's all being built in India, and what we started was, rather than getting into medical diagnostics, I'm going to take a detour. We're going to start by detecting everything that's in the water. What's causing cancer in India is the water supply. All of the industrial effluents that are going into it, the agricultural runoff. It's an endemic problem all across the country. In Bangalore, they're detecting uranium in their water in one side of Bangalore. So in September, I'm starting a project in which we're going to do pilot testing across India of water supplies and open source all the data. The goal is by the end of next year to have 700 devices in the field. By the end of this year, I want to have 20 or 30 devices in the field doing it. By the end of next year, having 700 devices. At the same time, we're testing urine. I mean, it's another funny thing that happened. How am I doing with time? In the middle of August, my CTO was in. My team is all over the world. But my CTO is in North Carolina. He had gone to India, and I said to Bessem Singh, let's to try urine right now. The technician said, no, we're not sure it's going to happen. He said, just do it. So he donated his urine, and we were able to detect the fact that he had a titanium filling. It was showing up in his urine. It was at parts per billion. He had 4 bananas that morning, so his potassium levels were elevated. I mean, it was just crazy. I mean, there was molybdenum or something. About the water he had drunk in Delhi had molybdenum in it, whatever. We were able to detect the minutest level. And then also he loves his scotch. So he had a lot of scotch the night before. So we had detected elevated levels of ethanol. We were able to detect it between ethanol and methanol with almost 100% accuracy. So the technology already works for urine. So right now my strategy is just to get the devices out there, and then we'll give everyone the hack. How do you now detect urine? You can start detecting urine. So we've trained the AI over the last 3 months on about a dozen different volatile organic compounds and metals. We're going to open up the entire gamut. We start. By here next. This is July. By mid-August, we're going to have 6 devices at AIMS. I'm going to have a team of 6 to 10 lab technicians working day and night training the AI up. Once you train the AI up, it recognizes it just like that. So and at the same time, I'm starting a project with Harvard Medical, Mayo Clinic, City of Hope, possibly Stanford. Mike Schneider talked to him about getting him a device. And then 3 of India's top institutions, AIMS, IIT Delhi, IIT Kharagpur. I'm going to get them all devices so they can start doing cancer detection. Because my thesis is that you can do protein analysis using the device and detect cancer patterns. My goal is to be able to detect cancers at the earliest stage. You get a urine test, a blood test, it tells you everything. Forget about the lab test you get right now. Everything at the same time for a cost of almost nothing. My goal is to provide comprehensive lab testing in India to the poor for 100 rupees, so the $1.20, to the rich for 500, 1,000 rupees, $10 or, whatever. Whatever the market will bear, the United States will charge a few $100 for the same tests. But essentially to take this all across and to start doing not only water, but industrial effluent testing and get these devices everywhere. That's what my strategy is like now. This company is going to be worth billions of dollars, and I've told my family, my children, that don't expect any of it. I want this to be worth billions of dollars and keep billions of dollars away to be co-coordinated. That's what I'm working on.
First panel is on screening and diagnostics, and Liebig, you could go ahead and run the panel if you like. So, hi, Brad Power. Nice to meet you all. Now we're ready to get into the all in Vivek's wonderful introduction into the panel. Sorry to be making it up a little bit as we. What's the panel? What are we gonna do here? Data diagnostics. Yes, we had diagnostics. So we have a guest panel here, and we're gonna ask each of them to introduce themselves and a few key messages. And I might ask them a few questions, and we'll end up the audience, and we'll fill up a half hour. I'm sure you got time. Let me just quickly introduce myself. I am Brad Power. As Roger mentioned, I'm co-founder and CEO of the Cancer Patient Ad, which is a nonprofit which helps cancer patients and caregivers navigate their care. We run a weekly webinar series. We had one last Wednesday on how a citizen scientist is using AI to guide his care. We had one yesterday on, which Roger moderated, on how a patient is using hemp to manage his pain. It's a range of things from patients and what they're doing to MD, PhD researchers and what's the latest technology. We believe strongly that, as Roger said, our keyword is that CAH patients get better outcomes, and therefore they need to be armed with information. And the way that we do that is through our webinars and through others, sharing of the research and ideas we have. My colleague Ari is also, he'll be introducing himself, but we have an accelerator we have for cancer and startups, primarily in diagnostics and navigation, direct to consumer, which is novel as a business model in this area. And then we're also working on our cell startup, which you may speak to as well. I'm a lymphoma survivor. I was diagnosed 8 years ago, went through the standard of care, got heart shots, and anyway, hi Chris. And actually, then also had CAR-T about 6 months ago in October, and I'm living proof that these treatments work, and thank God for all of the innovation that's happening in testing and treatment. So that's me. That's the background. I'll moderate, but I would ask each of the panelists to spend a few minutes introducing themselves and their key messages. I expect that we'll be talking about two primary domains and questions. One on what's the value of diagnostics and talking about diagnostics, and the second, from a startup perspective, how do we bring diagnostics to market? I mean, you know that it's hard with treatments because they have to go through the standard multiple phase testing and evidence. It takes multiple years and hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. What does it take to get a diagnostic to market? And so we'll be talking about that from the converse perspectives. We already had my door covered. So, all right. Hey, everybody. Ari Ackerstein. I'm actually incredibly pleased to see groups like this. It makes me just happy that we have so many folks focusing on real important problems in the world. So as Brad mentioned, we lead a health tech accelerator, kind of at the intersection of life sciences and clinical and consumer tech AI. And the other thing that that we're actually both focused on, where I spend most of my time right now, is building a cancer AI platform. I think probably as many folks in this room can give you the story about your wife. I'm sure many of us have been touched by cancer, and this is a fractured system. And you articulated well, Vivek, how broken the U.S. healthcare system is and how difficult it is for cancer patients to actually navigate that system. And so you think about this fractured market. At the same time, you have these exponential technologies leveling the playing field. And so what we're really thinking about is how do you actually help patients be empowered to make the decisions that they actually need to get the better outcomes that they're unlikely to get relying if they rely solely on their oncologist, their medical team, as well-meaning as they are. Everybody is kind of navigating this really fractured market. And so we're kind of focused on 3 or 4 areas. On the one hand, providing access to basic medical questions, to behavioral, to kind of running the gamut and using AI systems to actually level that information asymmetry that typically exists between patients and doctors.
And so helping them navigate that from a more empowered perspective, offering guidance on precision diagnostics that are typically underutilized, in some cases very underutilized by the provider systems due to the incentives that are often misaligned with patient outcomes in a fee-for-service model. Connecting patients with one another through communities, as many of us who have gone through this have realized, is that we get a lot of value by talking to other cancer patients that are further down the road than you are. And then we have about something on the order of 250,000 kind of point solutions, which you might think of as very specific, narrow verticals doing some kind of solving some piece of the pie or some piece of the elephant from an ecosystem perspective, and ensuring that patients can actually access those through personalization on the platform. I'm a cancer survivor myself, spent most of my time in consumer technology, and really was shocked to see just how fractured and broken the system is for patients, and kind of shifted to actually focus in on this problem space. So I'm sure we'll get into more detail, but that's me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rajan Kapash. I'm a medical science liaison at Grail. So I work with the Galleri reps in the Bay Area as the clinical point of contact for their clients, the doctors who order the Galleri test. I'm a genetic counselor by training, and I started my career in the perinatal genetics clinic at Stanford Children's, where one of the most commonly ordered tests was a blood-based screen analyzing cell-free DNA fragments in the blood to detect chromosome abnormalities like Down syndrome in pregnancy. So sometimes these tests would reveal incidental findings that indicated maternal cancer, a discovery that ultimately helped pave the way for a similar approach in oncology. And that's what put Grail on my radar. And I became fascinated by the potential to apply cell-free DNA technology to screen for cancer earlier. So as some of you may know, at Grail, our focus is our multi-cancer early detection, or MCED test called Galleri, which identifies a shared cancer signal across many different types of cancer, most of which have no current screening today. And the way that it works is that our AI algorithm looks at methylation patterns on the cell-free DNA, like a QR code, to determine if cancer may be present and predict the tissue of origin with high accuracy. So this represents a new paradigm shift. It's one simple blood test that complements existing screens and potentially expands the opportunity to catch cancers earlier, where outcomes can be dramatically improved. So one key message I'd like to share today is that early detection is no longer just an aspiration. It's becoming a tangible and sealable tool, but scientific innovation on its own is not enough. We're seeing firsthand that successful adoption requires trust, clinical education, thoughtful navigation of the diagnostic pathways, and clear value for both patients and providers. And the second takeaway is that we are also writing the playbook on how to responsibly bring novel diagnostics to market. This requires partnership from clinicians, health systems, regulators, and payers to balance the promise of novel tools against the rigor of evidence generation and the realities of clinical workflow. So I'm excited for the conversation around how we as a field can continue to accelerate the science and the real-world impact of cancer diagnostics.
Rajan, thank you. Let me just pick up before I open up the audience, and just pick up on your last point, which I think pre-screening is probably the most challenging aspect. But if you've been diagnosed with cancer and you want to get more information, having a test that gives you more information, everybody would sort of understand that. If you're, in my case, you have a disease and now you want to monitor that disease, also fairly straightforward. You probably get an insurance company, you pay for that. It's where you're doing pre-screening when I think it's like that Jack Nicklaus stuff, you can't handle the truth. Like there's a lot of concern that patients can't handle the truth. That's what issues where 23andMe had. So can you speak a little bit, and then Vivek and Ari as well, can you speak a little bit to the challenges of, which you alluded to, regulatory acceptance, payer acceptance, and then clinician acceptance? Apocryphally, they say that it takes 17 years for a technology innovation, not just evidence space, to actually get into widespread practice. Can you speak to that evolution between when something is evidence-based, better, useful, and getting adoption by a doctor who, went to medical school 20 years ago, doesn't know about this. And you got something that's better, but it's not going to be on standard of care for at least 18 months. And it's not going to be a widespread practice for possibly years.
Yeah. There are multiple levels to that question. I think there's a shared responsibility between the physician to stay on top of what is out there, hard to do in certain organizations. And when you're seeing like 30 patients a day, I get that you have limited time. So then that's why you have companies with medical teams like Grail has, where you have people whose job it is to go out and educate with providers about what's out there. And all we can hope for is that while new technologies are not standard of care, not broadly covered by insurance, at least conversations are happening where patients can be made aware of it. Because you don't know who's willing to pay $1,000 for a test that might change their life. You don't know who's touched by cancer in a way that they want to know about this, even if it's not, FDA approved yet or in the standard care guidelines. Those things take a lot of time, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't offer them until reach those milestones. That prenatal test that I referenced is standard of care now, never got FDA approval. And single cancer screens at one point were not standard of care. Mammograms were not routine. So it does take many years for that to get there. I think the clinical utility of a new technology or any kind of test is going to come down to a specific patient scenario, and we would defer to clinicians to have those conversations with their patients. Not everyone's going to be a reasonable candidate for every type of test, but for Galleri, for example, we believe that any adult at elevated risk for cancer should be offered the test. And then if the patient says, I don't want to know, okay, you don't have to have that information. If they are fully consented on what the test can tell them, what the limitations are, and then they make that decision and they feel empowered by the conversation they had with their physician, that's the best that we can hope for.
So before I go to Vivek, I just want to underline something which we believe at Cancer Patient Liability of Roger in particular, because we believe that empowered patients and be educated about a test that they believe they need. I think go to their medical team and say, why can I not get this test? And I get this test, here's the evidence, here's the medical research, here's the cited papers. And the doctors may not know about it, but a patient who just checked on ChatGPT, despite the hallucinations, may come on with something that they should consider for their care, so that partnership with an empowered patient, we believe, could accelerate the pace of acceptance of innovation. And again, Roger's story is a good example of that, where he asks, should I get this test? The doctor says, no, I wouldn't. And despite that, he did it. And then he took the results and saved his life. So that's the kind of story that we like too. It's like, you have some comments. Yeah, what I see happening is that, this is what it called. What I see happening is that we're going to have AI that sits on top of data, which guides us. So my strategy right now is to provide the entire comprehensive data. Every element that's found, like the example I gave with my CTO and his urine. The entire periodic table of elements will do the entire set of bulk organic compound to every compound we've recognized, provide that complete data set to the patient and tune it to an 8 and let the AI on top of it analyze, take other information you have and guide your journey. Right? And now as far as the regulations and everything go, I'm going to have to deal with all of that. Just right now I just want to get the technology out there and let people use it for whatever they want to, let other companies build on top of our platform the solutions. You let them worry about how we communicate it, whether the patient is ready or not ready. I'm doing the platform on which we can transform the entire industry. Great to be disrespectful, but my goal is to eat Grave for breakfast, LabPort for lunch, and the entire medical diagnostics industry for dinner. That's my ambitious side. And I'm going to do it in the next 12 months or so. Get the technology out there and make it happen.
Well, Tarzan year first. Predictions is like an Elon prediction, and are to see whether there's drivers, let's do that. If you do it in 24, it'll be remarkable. The one thing I would add is that, we're making the implicit assumption that a lot of this is driven by the medical system, your oncologist, and I think what we see kind of day to day at Cancer Patient Lab and other places is that you have a very small kind of percentage of patients that actually do lean in, and I think the standard wisdom is very few people will actually lean in, get involved. They treat it like brakes on a car with respect to how much thought they'll put into it, and that may be reasonable, but I do think that there's sort of artificial silos that just mean that entirely overwhelming for a cancer patient who may be actually in a highly emotional state. And so even by the time you get to the place of asking for the Grail test or for like, you're not even oriented to know what test to ask for, what the hell is up and what is down. And so I think even at the very foundational level of a little bit of education was an incredibly far way in reducing the friction that patients feel in terms of actually engaging at all, and everybody's bringing their own kind of mental model on, deference to the white coat versus, pushing back or whatever it is. People are bringing very different aspects to their care, and I think that there actually is a lot of room to help reduce that friction so that patients can get more involved and actually ask the intelligent testing, get to the place that they're actually asking about precision diagnostics, genetic testing, whatever it actually is, and get better outcomes, whether you're monitoring any remission or whether you're newly diagnosed. It kind of runs the gamut, but I think there's still a lot of room there, even outside of the fundamental innovation, which is absolutely necessary as well.
So I'm going to now improvise a little bit, and I'm looking at my two friends, Chris Sato and Gita Peters, and I'm going to ask them to speak to these same questions. So you're thinking about your answer. So the question for you is, these are two diagnostic companies. They're friends, longtime friends. You ready, Ita? Okay.
Yes.
She's ready to go. Yeah. All right, Ita.
So I want to comment on eating anyone for lunch because we're going to have lunch later. I'm happy to eat you. I don't think it's...
See the first in English.
My name is Gita Peterson. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Genomic Expression. I encourage you to stay long here to hear my story. I think I'm an RNA enthusiast because there's a difference between mass spec, DNA, and RNA. And I believe that the future is multi-nodal. And I'm European, so we're gonna eat each other. I don't think that's what's gonna happen. I think what's gonna happen is that we're gonna collaborate. Screening diagnostics have moved the needle faster in improving outcomes for cancer patients than any of the drugs we developed so far. Yet, we over-invest in drugs, we over-prescribe drugs that don't work, and we need to change the vocabulary. So, I'm looking forward to it.
No, I agree it's collaborative, by the way. Let me ask, I was just trying to tease you.
What has been your experience in your company in getting your diagnostic to market? Because I know you pivoted several times. You've been on the funding bandwagon all the time. Talk a little bit about the challenges you faced and what state.
So fundamentally, diagnostics are underfunded by a venture capital, and we've been struggling. I'm not a spin-up from Harvard or Stanford or any of these brand names. I come from Novo Nordisk. I have invented, developed, manufactured, and launched products globally. And I have a degree from DTU. Nobody knows what that is. And I think differently. So I can tell you a little bit about my own experience. We know the payer system is completely broken here. And Grail is going to struggle. I spoke with Kevin Conroy, the colon cancer guy. How long time that took to get that covered by insurance? I had my own experience because I asked for it when I turned 50. And my insurance didn't cover. So I had to go for a colonoscopy. I had no risk. That's much more expensive. That's so stupid, right? The second time it was covered, and you know what the practitioner told me? If it's positive, you have to do the colonoscopy. Yeah, I know that. But that's because I have cancer, right? So it's the even on the provider level, there is such a gap in understanding the power of diagnostics. And I hope Grail puts a shitload of money after educating them because they truly need it. Furthermore, in the community setting where 80% of cancer patients are being treated, they're not even being treated according to guidelines. They're not being tested. That's why. There's such a gap. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Gita. Chris. So Dr. Chris Apple, Sage Meg, good friend, local in Palado. It's an honor to be here on during this meeting. Dr. Chris Apple, MD, PhD, originally a anesthesiologist intensivist. I had my father dying of lung cancer, and basically he was using therapy because when he took care of a mother who had ovarian cancer and said treatment didn't work in her last months of life, he said to me, "Unless you can promise me, son, this is going to work, I don't want it." And I understand it. I was on the cancer IRB at UCSF at that time for already 5 years. I spoke to Terry Johan and I asked him, well, what's the chances that this will work? And he said to me, oh, you don't want to know. And I said, well, I'm also a biostatistician. I'm teaching bioscience. So tell me the numbers. And when he said to me, it's 30% for a stage 4 lung cancer, that there will be an objective tumor response to carboplatin. I said, what am I doing here? Here at our IRB, we really make sure patients get at least standard of care. And yet, we're losing the patients at our own guinea pigs. It's not right. And I said, well, wait a minute, why are we not taking the tumor? Why are we not testing this? Oh, if we tried before, we know it doesn't work. I did the data. It works. Can be done. Let's do CSF. Founded Sage on my own dime. And now we have a clear certified test where we can create hundreds of microtumors from a patient sample within 1 day, debug it, and have a result within 7 to 10 days for the all countries. Great. GS certified, LBT, no need for FDA approved. White. Market penetration, very different. And that's, I see, the brain's main question. Why is it so different? First of all, patients don't know it. They are getting their surgery, all the remaining tissue is thrown into formalins and instead can't test it anymore. How to do a functional precision oncology test. And then the next question is, if the patient knows about it, says to the oncologist, I failed first second line therapy, can I have this? Well, then we need a biopsy. If it were for a genomic test, though, it would probably be okay. But because it's not a genomic test, it's kind of, well, do we really know it? And the challenge for oncologists, and we talked about is 30 minutes or 20 minutes per patient or 30 measures per day. The challenge is that the oncologist already is feeling pushback from many areas. Insurance may not want to cover certain treatments, even if it may make standard of care. And so oncologists, with their workflow, need to navigate how can they make clinically accurate, relevant decisions within a limited amount of time. The only way to go through that is to adhere to the guidelines verbally. It's guidelines. If anything's outside of the guidelines, it would throw off basically the whole time process. And the oncologist also has a concern, is it still considered standard of care? What about, can it have liability implications? The patient has to pay for it. I don't want to ask the patient for that. And so there are a lot of hurdles there when it comes for a patient asked it for something that goes beyond standard of care. And so it does require, in my mind, a lot of patient education. It requires the voice of the patient, and a patient like Roger being insistent and say, I don't take no for an answer. And so patient needs to be educated and empowered. And while you need a prescription by law for a test, if the oncology authorities, if your treating physician denies something that is reasonable to you, I think there should be some responsibility of the physician to address your health concern and not to deep or superimpose on the, I would like to say, the right of self-determination, because that's actually currently not enforced. And I think Rail would do much better, in my mind, if it were not just saying, well, how do we get FDA approval? No, reality, you don't need FDA approval for legal commercialization of the test. But you are trying to be as
as careful with what you say and with tons of disclaimers so that the FDA ultimately will say yes to you. And you're hoping that with the FDA approval, then finally, also then payers they buy it to this. There are many examples where this FDA being paid in buy it, right? So I actually think it should be much more helpful, thoughtfully.
Well, just to comment on that, there's a reason also. So the FDA approval process is really important for broad adoption of this test when we're thinking about CMS coverage. Medicare populations, they fall into our intended use population just based on their age-related risk for cancer. And Medicare will not pay for a screening test that is not FDA approved. So yes, we're an LDT. We have launched commercially. We've been out and available for over 4 years now. And we're working on commercial insurance coverage on one track while we're offering the test to people who can pay with cash. We are making good progress there. We are covered by a lot of employers of life insurance companies now as a benefit, which is great progress. A lot of people are getting testing through that way. And then we also want to reach patients who have CMS coverage by going through this FDA approval pathway, not because it's necessary for the test to be available, but because we want this to be a population on a screen. And so accessibility for as much of the population as we can get is our ultimate goal. But like,
Thank you. So, sort of as moderators, going to moving to wrap up by the hour. Yep, 5 minutes. So, final thoughts or reactions, Vivek, Ari, to Geeta and Krista. Ari, in particular, maybe you might talk about our friend Tony and sort of the. One of the things we've identified from a patient's point of view is there's an obvious question: what treatment should I get? I just been diagnosed. What treatment should I get? There's another question, which is, what tests should I get? And we have found very few resources that can answer that question. The one is our good friend Tony Magliasso and Protea Biodiagnostics.
Yeah, so let me actually just back up for a moment. And so several years ago, I was leading one of the biggest second opinion theft products in telehealth. And this is through a company, Included Health. And over time, I think in working with Brad and the Cancer Patient Lab and others and kind of my own particular journey, what I've realized is that what we call this kind of second opinion thing as like this monolithic thing is actually multiple steps. So you have kind of a diagnostic second opinion and a treatment second opinion. And so it's kind of this garbage in and garbage out kind of situation. The way somebody like Eric Tony Magliacco, who runs a company, Protea Biodiagnostics, so kind of full class pathologists. And we've seen time and time again, I think 2 points to cook up from both you and Geeta, Chris. One is that if you don't actually specifically hone in on what test should I get, and let me validate what the diagnosis actually is and make sure that it's right. And oftentimes there's ambiguity there. And the oncologist may not have all the data, all the interests, the incentives necessarily to run those conditional tests, something like the SAGE test that you're conducting is actually pretty remarkable in the band of patients that's going to be relevant for. And you get into the data sibling issue as well, where who owns the tissue, which Chris can talk to you about after, but you really, when you pull on the thread about the data ownership, it is not just records and like that, it's actually tissue, biologics, pathology slides, etc. that is called into question. The second thing is that once you actually get that, and that's a big question, but what we hear from patients often is that oncologists are almost playing checkers, and the best patients are playing chess. They're thinking 3, 4, 5 moves ahead. And a very concrete example would be something like cumulative radiation that a patient could get. And so it could be that part of the standard is getting radiation right now. And it could also be that if you're smart about it and kind of think about a different path, you would actually wait for radiation later, and you might do an earlier treatment with one radiation, such that you kind of keep that bullet in the chamber, so to speak. And so having a strategy, as basic as it sounds, can actually be life-saving for a lot of patients. And so I know we're wrapping up here, so I'll pass on for final thoughts to David.
Well, I'm a big fan of organoids. I think that is a critical solution. Every cancer patient should go through that process. But bigger than that, I think that there are amazing opportunities right now. It isn't the big companies that are going to solve the problem. It's going to be startups. We need innovative ideas. We need to break the rules. We need to do whatever it takes because we can. We have the power now. we can take it over from big industry and solve the problems and really either cure cancer, every other disease, and make the world a better place. Stop at that.
UQ. So I'll underscore that. I wrote an article that basically said was disruption. And for those of you know, the manuscript research or disruption was written by Clayton Christensen, and he makes a distinction between sustaining innovations and disruptive innovations. And sustaining innovations are same customer, same value proposition, but just a little faster, cheaper, better. And if you have an industry like healthcare, which is a culture of conservatism, because every doctor is trained, do no harm. So basically, any innovation needs to be thought about multiple times before you do anything. That's the culture that either doctors come with or they are inculcated with over time. As opposed to Silicon Valley, which is let's run many small experiments and see what works. So that's the Silicon Valley ethic around the same kind of learning. One of my favorite examples is how long does it take to run an improvement experiment in healthcare? Answer, a randomized clinical trial. How long does it take? 5 to 10 years. Okay, how long does it take to run a innovation improvement experiment in Silicon Valley? Let's call it A/B test. It takes about an hour. Do you like the blue button or do you like the red button? Which works better? So Silicon Valley is operating on learning cycles measured in hours, and the healthcare industry is learning cycles measured in multiple years or a decade. Which is going to be the faster path to innovation and improvement. So we need more Silicon Valley. We're here. We need more Silicon Valley in healthcare innovation. Not we be more software-like and running small experiments to scale what works. And the answer is, how do you get disruption in healthcare? Answer, startups designed to innovate and empowered and engaged patients who say, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore, who basically advocate for themselves. So we're trying to empower and enable patients to advocate for themselves and thereby accelerate the pace of innovation in healthcare. Roger Standing.
All right. Our boss. Thanks, guys. Thanks, pal. All right. Our trade's right on time here. Next panel is our investor panel. It's always a very popular panel. I'd like to introduce Danica Dale. She's an investor here. In this case, in Silicon Valley. Could my investors come up to the front?
Well, thank you, Brad. It was great to hear some very touching personal stories, as well as some forward-thinking ideas around to keep you organized. So I'm here with two colleagues, and we're hoping to spend some time telling you a bit about our backgrounds, our perspective on precision diagnostics at the hair, some trends that we're seeing in cancer investing, as well as trends that we aren't seeing. So to start us off, my name is Maldra Dale, and I have a background in cellular and molecular biology, and I met Roger through the Italian government, and then curious to learn more about my panelists, Angela and Suya.
I would like to start by thanking our organizers and Corinne as well, my fellow panelists, and to you as well for coming. I'm Dr. Angela Jimenez. I'm a primary care physician. I have been 2 times founder. I also have a background as a clinical study or site permitted member for the National Institutes of Health. I currently invest in companies at the intersection between health and technology.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. This is an honor to speak here. I really looking forward to discuss what we are thinking about and what we want to share. My name is Soyoung Park. I'm a general partner of One South Pro Venture Partners. We are a small fund, global fund, to invest in transformative technology to support healthy aging. So I'm actually going to go to the longevity technologies as well as diagnostics, preventative diagnostics therapies and therapeutics. And also I am looking for the synchronization between the traditional healthcare as well as the digital technologies, including AI, robotics, and quantum computers. I'm looking forward to discuss today.
It would be great to hear from both of you how you would define precision diagnostics versus preventative diagnostics, especially when you look at the current companies that are on the market.
Sure. I think both are necessary to improve patient outcomes. But I think probably the main difference between precision and preventative is that preventative is more focused on predicting what's going to happen to a patient regarding an harmful, and precision is more like to adapt even a treatment for that patient.
Yeah, I'm totally agree with you. Definitely, there's some diagnostics we need to go to find out what can be more accurate to the right person. Some people probably don't have the high sensitivity, some many now, but I'm more going towards than diagnostic for more for precision treatment. So as Amaro said, we are what we struggling is everybody is different, so we react differently to the drug we have. And most of the time, doctors spend time to try this drug and that drug and then find a cocktail. It took so much time, and it actually gonna read the body too much. So of course, everything's just from diagnostic screening, diagnostics, and also we want to find the precision treatment. How can we actually try to minimize all the adverse effects, but also maximize our efficiency?
Can you speak a bit about how developing digital twins or pulling from electronic health record data sets can inform some of these technologies and a company that you like to invest in?
Yeah, so I have multiple companies. Actually, was this idea is one company actually came from Argentina. They are in New York, but they bought the Florence technology. What they really do is they have a basically same like organoid. I met them like 5 years ago, and what they try to do is using your cell and tissue, they find out something like a test kit, and then try all the potential drugs, HC drugs, and the potential cocktails using their AI technology. They try to find the right cocktail, and also maybe even maybe future we can find a more advanced drug specific for you. So that's the kind of goal, and I see more activities nowadays. I also see one company from Canada. They got correlated with the Saudi Arabia, and they also brought same concept, but in their case, Basically more advanced in the approach is different. But I actually see this kind of digital twins can be the solution, because now 12 America now allowed using the organoid instead of animal test. And I don't say the animal test will be definitely need in vivo instead of in vitro, but still I see just a lot of acceptance in this kind of organoid testing, and I think this is actually a starting point that we can find I could develop the drugs for the future.
Yes, regarding synthetic data that you collect that is being used to create digital twins, I think it's an important part of how currently startups are dealing with research on development. Especially, we are seeing that for certain cancers, for certain chronic diseases, or for rare diseases, it's really difficult to engage individuals to participate in those clinical trials. So I think synthetic data probably is the next frontier regarding how to do an adequate research and development, especially for certain parts.
When we're thinking about the next frontier, can you tell me how social determinants of health databases can support or hinder that development?
Sure. So, as we previously discussed, I think cancer is not only genetics or metabolomics or coherence. It is also where you live, where you grow, and where you were born. And that is the social determinants. Yeah. Those factors influence the development cancer and sometimes the outcomes of cancer as well. So I think it's really important to have a multi-omics database that combines not only the omics side of face, but also the social determinants of health, to have a more holistic view of how a patient can be helped and how can we tailor interventions to have a more precise intervention of that patient.
So Young, I see you nodding. Again, you talked a lot about using organoids to tailor a precise intervention for a patient. And of course, organoids were mentioned in the panel previous, so we can really see their applications across both diagnostics as well as in the eyes of the investor. Could you tell me a little bit about how you see multi-omics approach and social determinants of health working together to inform the model you use with the organoid?
I actually totally agree with that, John. Basically, gene is not everything. We actually think gene mutation actually affects your cancer about 7 to 10%. What is the other 90%? After being just a lot of effect. What I usually, the analogy I usually use is when you have not too much stress, it can be environmental, it can be air pollution, it can be your your bossing at work. When you have some stress, your inflammation goes up. And then when you are young or when you're healthy, your immunology can actually handle this inflammation. So when this inflammation is handled, you can maintain your health. But at some point, with all these kind of different environmental or habits, with your diet and whatever you are mentally frustrated, your body significantly increase the inflammation. And at some point, if your immune system goes down, then it cannot kind of help to control immune system. So that's the time you can see that chronic disease, and also cancer. So when I actually see that all kind of new frontier technologies, we definitely want to treat immunology approaches, but also we want to see your data can see how you actually react your other kind of approach. But I want what I want to actually bring it is a cytokine approach. So we are talking about on combining two anti-inflammatory cytokine. Cytokine is high toxic. How can we actually handle it? That's the biggest problem. So far, we weren't very successful on that. But we are talking about how we can actually combine this with controlling cytokine, so we can actually measure your own body, how you react to this cytokine platform, and then we can actually provide the best dosage and best treatment for yourself. So that's the kind of one I'm actually see very frontier, and also we will get a lot of data. We are clinical. We cannot live without data. With all this data, what do we do? So far, it was all blocked because it's personal information. You cannot kind of release it. It's all silo if everything is spread. But now we know the value of the data, and we want to find out what kind of pattern we can find and how we can actually apply it in the the drug. Can be IV, can be oral, can be patch. What kind of delivery method do we want to use? So those kind of all in multiple verticals of our drug development as well as diagnostics, we definitely want to see what is the best system, best structure we can build for that person. But again, we need to find a pattern. We need to kind of have the majority of people who can be applied, and then we can go to personalized medicine.
Thank you. It's helpful to hear you talk about the cytokine trends in investing, as well as the importance of clinical data before making an investing decision. Angela, it'd be great to hear your take on trends that you're seeing in cancer investing, and then we'll segue to Lou's introduction of both the Perself and the fund.
Great. I want you to raise your hand if you know someone with cancer or any other chronic disease. Amazing. Look around. How many of you are entrepreneurs? Hello? How many of you are healthcare workers? Amazing. We see now towards your question now, more good than trends is what benefits. And I think all the information you just gave me, we can agree that we need more initiatives and interventions that are focused on the application
and not only the clients. Having said that, I think it is important to highlight what the longevity field is doing to meet patient. Why? Age is a risk factor for almost every cancer. So it makes sense to invest in companies that are dealing with research and development of longevity pathways and mechanisms to identify novel targets that allow us to have a more customized, personalized interventions for patients and for clinics.
Thank you. It was helpful to hear about how cancer and longevity can work together to care for the patient, as well as the impact of immunotherapies. Lahu, it'd be lovely to hear a bit about you as well as the fund.
Yeah, first, sorry for being late. I'm a Stanford alumni. I used to drive around the campus. So I know the space so well. I know where to park at. The ship is taking less than really hard to find a parking today. So I'm Lu. I'm the founder and managing partner of Fusion Fund. Or down in the our office is just in downtown Palo Alto. So we have a strong collaboration with Stanford for lots of the deep tech and the healthcare company. I started Fusion Fund about 10 years ago. So this year is actually our 10-year anniversary. We invest across the United States, focus on enterprise AI, healthcare, and industrial automation. And before I started Fusion Fund to become a so-called dark side investor, I was an entrepreneur. I built and sold my own medical device company to Boston and Tempe before I go to the downside. I really want to leverage capital to support more founder working on the hardest problem, and healthcare is one of the hardest problem. So I think your second part of the question is the trend, right? Yeah. So back in 2017, I published a report in JP Morgan House Conferences, AI in Healthcare. So you can see how early we were passionate and also have strong conviction that AI can play an important role in healthcare, specific for cancer. We all know the future for cancer therapy is really just personalization. It's not only just a personalized therapeutic solution, but also going back to what you mentioned earlier about longevity, about the quality of life, how to do early stage personalized diagnostic and how to together with personalize the treatment plan and go from there that would be able to identify the problem early on and go from there. And also recently we're seeing more engagement and also deeply embedded AI analytics, cancer and also healthcare application in general. Recently I just invested a company to a vertical model for cell therapy, which is really impressive. They're a partnership with Love of Pharma company already. We also just invested a company. It's actually a spin-off of ARC Institute. And they have this launch of Evo2. It's a vertical model for sequencing data. And they spin off the company. We actually invest in their early lab and put it to a commercialization pathway. And sequencing data could be a major contributor to the therapeutic solution for cancer. So that's some of the interesting trends we're seeing in the market right now, but more is coming.
It would also be great to hear about trends that you are not seeing and that instead you're hunting for. Can you tell me about a couple topics that you're looking for really interesting startups with really interesting clinical data?
Yeah, so I think you mentioned a little bit, I catch the second part of your answer. I really agree it's about the data silo issue. That, we talk about healthcare as an industry with a huge amount of high quality data. And also people didn't know 30% of the data we have in human society actually are healthcare related. And only 5% of it we're leveraging for, application right now. So it's very, very, very little being used, but we have so much like a golden mine, we're not leveraging it. But why? Because we have the data isolation issue. Hospital here are not sharing the data with the upper side. Another thing is data curation. Even we said healthcare data is high quality, there's still noise. I always talk about, I'm a material science background, we talk about the term called the signal noise ratio. Now, unfortunately, the signal noise ratio is very low. So how we really have the technology cure the data into a high quality data library and applied AI build application, all of it is specific for healthcare. So I think that's something I really want to see more. In terms of data isolation issue, we're already seeing some interesting company doing federal learning. Using federal learning be able to partially solve the issue. It's not a 100% solution yet, so we're also hoping to identify more companies doing that. Another thing is, of course, I know I talk a lot on the AI side, but I really want to see more like small edge AI model be able to run on the local devices. We all know in healthcare industry, you won't be able to upload everything to the cloud. You don't want to upload everything to cloud for the compliance and data privacy issue. So if we, instead of using large reports, have the small vertical edge model, have AI run on the edge medical devices that have it already on the local sensors, I think that would be more practical for us, for the hospital system to accept this new technology.
Angela, I see you nodding your head.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. I also would like to see anything regarding inflammation as a risk factor for cancer. Why? Because we are seeing that things that we were not associating before with cancer, now they are. And with the development of GLP-1s, now we can prove that actually inflammation is associated with not only chronic diseases, but also cancer. So what you just mentioned is really important. We need medical devices, or software is a medical device that trapped or identify or can do surveillance of many biomarkers of inflammation that may create outcomes for patients, especially those patients who are at risk of developing cancer.
Yeah, I just want to add. So I'm definitely very into the healthy aging. That's my thesis. So I'm the longevity technologies such as a stem cell, actually regrowing, as well as the regenerating, the self and Jeeve. So those are kind of something I'm very, very into. But since I just found out we are all female panelists here, so I thought maybe we really need to bring more data and then more solutions for the female cancer, specific ovarian cancer, breast cancer. I lost my mom with those two cancers. And that's probably the one reason I really want to serve the problem. And especially for the woman, we don't see a lot of data yet. And also how hard to diagnose ovarian cancers. It's almost impossible to find it unless you do biopsy. Actually, supporting, of course, like making the biopsy, we can actually find ovarian cancer with a high sensitivity, high specificity. So I think that's the kind of one area I like to appreciate to and help. So if you help a woman, if you make woman healthy, your family is happier.
I also want to quickly add into that another, I won't say it's not happening, it's still happening, but it's really too early on. We're trying to look for an interesting company doing non-invasive surgery for cancer treatment to remove cancer cell. You know, the typical cancer cell removal basically is to destroy your immune system overall, but there's a new technology to be able to do. Micro-invasive is available already, but how about a non-invasive?
Well, it would be great to hear from Dr. D'Souza and Dr. Shi during the morning networking break, because I believe we have some immunotherapeutics and epigenetic focuses on these cancer, as well as some seasoned investors like Michelle Colucci, who has a large non-invasive testing focus. But finally, it'd be great to hear how seed stage to Series B companies can stay competitive in the current global landscape. We've heard a little bit about high-quality clinical data. We've heard a little bit about leveraging existing data to train AI models that respect HIPAA. And we've heard a little bit about being aware of the social determinants of health, how they might affect inflammation. Could you speak a little bit more about how a successful seed stage to Series B company would be using these topics within their operations or their product to be a really attractive investment to your fund?
Before that, I think it's important to also recognize something that was related to the previous question that we discussed before this panel, and that is like how, can you please raise your hand if you had a pap smear before? How many of you love that?
That's all right. I think personalization and empowerment of the patient to do it itself for the patient, his case, is really important. So to answer the other question, I think it's important to understand the startups that really assess the needs of the populations that they're working with. And because that gives them a different insight, not only to develop the product or to do the proof of concept, but also that assures that they're going to have a try it, market it. And also I'm interested in companies that have data, that they are developing for their patient, that they are developing, knowing all the hassles and all the full regulations that they need to address in order to have a successful project.
Yeah, and so what I actually asked, it took things. One, It's a scientific theory. Second, market adoption. That's the what I asked. But how I actually measure is when I make a decision commenter, I actually ask three things: data, traction, and variation. So three I want to talk, and otherwise I wait. So you mentioned the seed and Series A. As a matter of fact, like every industry show different tractions, but I think I want to value the progression. How you can make progress when we read next time what we will bring, what kind of data we'll bring, what kind of traction we'll bring, and that's what I actually check him every time. And valuation, of course, that's the time of fundraising event. We will see what kind of value you will bring. Another thing I actually like to talk about what kind of capital efficiency you can actually bring to us. Especially biotech, right now I see it's kind of dark age. Sorry to say that was really hard right now. We haven't seen the meaningful IPO for a while, almost 3 years. So we actually thinking about with the new policies, I think a lot of big pharma will hold off aggressive movement. In that sense, what we really kind of want to see is how you can survive. This is basically capital efficiency. If you maintain the capital efficiency, how you can do the lean kind of operations. And more than anything else, what I like to ask is speed up. So we have one company, everybody will know, very famous company in longevity sector, in silico. In silico said, I found DC, 5 or 6 diseases within 6 to 18 months using AI technology. Of course, it's only DC. I don't know how much they can actually improve, but still, your computers are moving so fast. So I want you to ensure that you also speed up and then you can read outcome as fast as you can.
And before you move on, it would be great to hear an example of what good quality data means to you, as well as a story of a favorite scrappy entrepreneur who was very capital efficient.
Yeah, so a quality data, the one I really like, of course, I want to see predictable data. So I think, maybe it's me, I think even the small animal data is a little bit kind of fade away nowadays. I did cure a lot of VCs that I don't really trust small mouse data more than before. So unfortunately, but that accurate can do large animal data is super expensive and it takes a long time. But I think, as I mentioned, if we can actually ensure that we using the mini organoid, like you can use it for brain, you can use it for lung, and then you can actually kind of quantify, magnify how much you can actually show that in the real human body. But still, it's still in vitro, as you would know. So you kind of find our analogy how we can actually provide to the is equals to in vivo. If we cannot answer it, maybe I think decrease is still and maybe you can come back later. That's part of the answer you hear. So for me, I like to see vivo. But if you cannot do that, at least you can see by the mini organoid, and if you can provide it, it will be better. And of course, next door could be small animal data.
So I think for us, we invest in seed and Series A. So I think early stage expectation from investors is very different from A-round and B-round. So for a lot of the company we invest, they not necessarily have a strong validation yet out, even only preclinical data. And also, of course, a pre-approval. But on the other side, just add on one thing to what I panelists are sharing, it's getting a partnership earlier is better. I know it used to be you can just work on your technology, wait till later, but now this collaboration between the smaller startup and the large corporate is essential. And if you don't try to identify potential partnership early on, a competitor will do. And the challenge is even you have a better technology, as long as they start working together, they're migration costs. So I always just suggest early stage founder, even you said, okay, my product is not ready. We have a company I invested about 10 years ago doing the microfluidic for single-cell sequencing. And before they got approval ready, they start to have this service contract with large pharma company, just validate their service. Got a little bit, service revenue, but more importantly, it's a partnership, conversation learning, and also validation of their core technology before approval happens.
Yeah, just a quick remark about that. I was talking with Kaiser Permanente the other day exactly about that talk. And they told me, we start always with iBots. And we don't start like big. We always start with little trials in our hospitals. And sometimes I think founders forget the importance of talking to a large scale systems to develop the product. So I think yes.
Well, thank you everyone for hearing our perspectives on digital twins, how to differentiate between precision diagnostics versus preventative diagnostics, and the use of organoids to get you on your path to clinical data. We'd love to hear more from you. We'll all be in the morning networking session, and we look forward to speaking more about your companies, your backgrounds, and your current investing practices. Thank you so much.
Thank you.